Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream, we work on a Django app. We're building it. It's a Django app powered by Python, and we teach you about building Python apps, then making live applications, and we walk through a process of getting every line of code out there. So this is an entire exploration of the journey of building a journaling app. It could be any app, but this is the context that we're in. And we're going to continue on that this evening. This is the first week where the app has been live and in use by its first user, which is me. Huddy, welcome. Good to see you as well. And the goal this week is to start down that path of refinement. We have the core of what the service needs to do, and now there's a lot left to do to make it work. It needs to work for other people. There's no homepage. There's lots of stuff that's missing, and so we need to explore all of that. And then I have some feedback about how did the week go this past week, and so on. So we'll get into it. You can ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. But let's get right into it. So the app, as a reminder, if you've never joined the stream before or the past about the journal, to keep it interesting, it's random selection. So it's just a little reminder that of what they did. John, welcome. Good to see you as well. And so that's the core of the application. It's not going to be much more beyond that. We can explore additional features, but I want to set up a very strong foundation for the feature set this app will be, and no illusion about being something grand necessarily, although we may explore more fanciness in the future. But that's really what we're building. So this week, I had the actual system running where it was submitting each day a prompt to me as the primary user, and then I was responding, and I was able to check in the Django admin that my entries were getting there. And each day as I added a new entry, I could see the randomness working and see, even over the course of a week, random entries that I had seen or that I had written a few days prior. So it seems to be working, which is good news. I did notice a couple of things that we'll talk through, and let's just go through them. So the first is an oversight that I put into the email template. Let's take a look, and I might have had this originally, but we messed up, or I took it out somewhere along the way, and we just need to fix it up. So if we look at the prompt template, the thing that actually gets sent out to the user's email client, we have this part that says looking back of how many days. So the idea is your prompt will look something like, today is Wednesday, December the 6th, 2023. That's the format that's kind of listed here. And then in a parenthetical, it is a relative date to when the prompt is received to the email client. So I'm sorry, let me reframe. That's not actually correct. So what this is a previous entry. That's what I meant to say. So maybe it was last Tuesday, November the 28th. So it might have something that says something like on Tuesday, November the 28th of 2023. And in parentheses, it should say, well, what is that? 8 days ago, I guess. It would say that right here. And the problem is we forgot the word ago. So all I'm getting in my prompts currently is it would say something like 8 days. And that's a pretty easy thing to fix. It's just the addition of the word here of ago. And this is the text template. And we want to do the same thing in the HTML template, which is what I'm normally getting this stuff in. And so that is a very simple change, just a quick oversight, but I wanted to go ahead and knock that one out while we're here. And we've got to make sure that our tests still run. I don't think I'm testing on the content of that, but that's just one that was a little rough edge that I left in there by accident. So quick, I guess 8 characters worth of delta there on our diff, and let's go ahead and commit that and then fix the relative past date message, and that fixes number 48. So nice easy warm up to get started. Push the code up, so it should be there. All right, so let's return back to the list, see what else we got. I think we might still have broken pre-commit stuff, so we're waiting for the next update there. So part of this life cycle of me walking through this application is I'm going to show you everything, even the kind of boring stuff. Eventually, we're going to have more of that boring stuff when we set up the automatic package updates. So we'll have to periodically update our packages and make sure that if this is running as a software as a service, I want to offer something secure. So a way to do that is to use Dependabot from GitHub, and it will automatically create some pull requests and run the test against them, and we can go check those things out and commit them. But we're not ready to do that yet, and there's lots left to do. So that's in the future. Coming back to the list, though, let's talk about what else there was. All right, something else I observed is my email client, which is Gmail, was giving me this message of, at the bottom of the message, it would include, well, let me just click on the description here. I think I included some of it. It would include this, and you might have seen something like this before. And actually, this is a markdown version of that. They would actually show this phrase, message clipped with the brackets around it, and then it would have a link, an actual hyperlink. And when I got that from another source here and pasted it in, it converted it to a markdown, and then I took out the actual link because it was very specific to my Gmail message and wasn't appropriate to show. But it's confusing to me that this would show up at all. Am I getting some drops again on the stream? Could be. I've been having some condition trouble here. Not sure why it's having trouble buffering. Sorry, John. Or all of you, I guess. Not sure what's up, to be honest. Hopefully it'll resolve itself, and if not, I can make some adjustmts in the stream settings. I don't know if I can do that on the fly. So we'll operate with it as best we can this evening. And then I will explore what's going on with my network stuff. I might need to reboot some pieces of my hardware stack if it's a continual problem. Anyway, we've got this message about things being clipped. And from my impression, that is really absurd. And it's absurd because the content that we're putting out there is really well, you just saw it. You saw the template. It's very short. It is a message that is saying, you wrote this, and then whatever your previous messages are. And I got to tell you, I'm not writing books in my journals each night. So we've got 2 lines that are guaranteed to be there, plus like a paragraph or 2 of text. Nothing that you would think Gmail would balk at. And so there's something going on with the content that's causing it to clip. And so the best idea I could think of was maybe my mail service is including some tracking that's including, well, I know it is. I saw, like, I went and did a view source on the stuff, and maybe the little hidden tracking pixel that SendGrid wants to include is causing Gmail to actually like notice that as something extra and then trying to hide or elide that. And frankly, I don't care about mail tracking. I don't care if you actually open something. That is not of interest in this service. What I care is that it went out. So I think what I want to do is go into SendGrid and see if I can turn that off. Because I think I'm using a shared SendGrid account for both this service and my homeschool application, which is an unfortunate reality of how because I don't have a separate corporate entity for this SaaS. It's all under my personal account. But what I want to do is go into those settings, and we'll check them out and see if there's a way that I can disable that open tracking, which will hopefully cause SendGrid to stop including any tracking pixel, which in turn would make it so that Gmail doesn't view or include the message clip thing. That's my theory. We'll do this test, and I'll be able to report back next week if it actually works. So this is going to be poke around the configuration, make sure it happens, and then we'll actually try and turn it off. Let's do that. So I need to go SendGrid. Might need to log into SendGrid, and I always can't remember if they have my email on blast all over the place. So I might need to hide this stuff. Well, okay. Thanks, 1Password. So I'm gonna put on the secret screen for a moment and continue, as you can listen to me. And logging in now, I'm gonna do the 2-factor dance, which is always good fun, right? So there's SendGrid, and SendGrid, for whatever, doesn't autofocus the place you actually have to put in the number. So I often forget to click that, but I didn't forget this time. So it's opening up the app dashboard. It says my name. Okay, I think this is safe to show for the moment. Let me bring the scene back. And here we are. So we've got delivered, and we've got opened. And this is the, like, I don't care. I don't care about this number. So we need to go to the settings and see if we can turn off that stuff. I might have to bounce back and forth with cause I don't know what these screens show and don't show. And I'm sorry, y'all. It's kind of annoying, but just the reality of this. So what I'm going to do is expand this, and let's see. It's probably tracking. So let me put on the secret screen again. I'm going to go to tracking, and it's set like, okay. Yeah, there's nothing sensitive here. So you can see, I don't know if it did this by default or I clicked it thinking that this was going to be okay, but you can see how it's doing this. It says that an invisible image is being appended to HTML emails to track if they've been opened. And that's what I want to turn off, because I think it will help clear up that message clip thing. So I'm sacrificing some amount of data, but it's not data that I care about. So let's go over here and disable this. Now I think it will do it. The sad reality is it's going to do it globally for the account, which means I also lose this for the homeschool app. But again, I don't really care there either, but I think it's fine. So I think that's all we need to do for this particular one. So let's just add a comment and say disabled open tracking. Confirm if the message clipped part goes away on future prompts. Okay. So we can't actually close this one out this evening, but that piece is done. So that's at least one other thing. All right, let's return to the issue list and check out what we can do next here. Another thing that was happening is, so ironically, here's a bit of good fun for you. I created this service because my previous service that I was using was having operational issues and had some downtime stuff for multiple days. And little has my service been up for, hasn't even been up for a week in terms of actual usage, and I got some Sentry error. Got an error here. No, okay, hold on, gotta log in. And gotta make sure that it's not actually including information about me in this message. Good, all right, because it's just about, yeah. So here's the fun thing that was happening is we got a failed connection. So what was happening is we have, as a reminder, we have the Heroku scheduler configured to actually do background jobs on very cheaply, and on a cron schedule, it will start up, and it's configured to run once a day. Basically, the scheduler wakes up at a morning that corresponds to 8 a.m. Eastern, and then whatever that is in UTC, and wakes up, it does a loop that sends out the prompt for all the active accounts, and then shuts down and goes away. And when sometime this week, what day was this? Where does it say? December the 4th. I didn't get an email. I did get an email, but it was not the email I desired. I got a Sentry email in my inbox that morning, and it was this operational error. So one of the realities that we're going to have to deal with is that Heroku doesn't guarantee that the database is always going to be up. They do promise that they will maintain the database, but they have downtime that they can build into their system. And I just happened to, on this particular week, get bit by a downtime window on my own database, which is an unfortunate reality. I'm not going to address this today. I just want to highlight it, that it was a problem. Just trying to report back the experience that I had from this past week of having this in operation. And it failed to connect. It raised an operational error, which is end up in Sentry, which is just annoying. And we'll have to do something about this. So I think it will ultimately affect the sending mechanism. So there's a couple things about the sending mechanism that we will change in the future. One is this is only scheduled to run once daily. There's no configuration in terms of that. We've got some issues about changing it so that a user can set the time zone that they would like to receive it. But we also have this possibility now that without any control over it, the database could be missing because it's down for maintenance, because actually they even told us that a database system is in recovery mode. So that was something that was on Heroku's side. So we will need to, in our job, catch operational errors. But I'm actually not super comfortable. Operational errors is one of those things that you should be pretty wary of trying to catch. You certainly don't want to catch it and be totally silent on behavior. So we'll have to think through, how do we make sure that we have a robust system that in the event of an operational error, we'll still be able to deliver emails. So just picture this future where we're sending out the emails on every hour. And so a user specifies, hey, this is the hour that I want to receive this email on. What we don't want to do is have that go out every hour, and the hour that a particular user wants to receive the email on, the database is down. And so when the next hour hits, maybe the database is back up and it's working for everybody else, but for that one user, they missed it, and like they don't get a prompt that day. That would be a bad case. So we need to be able to not only handle gracefully an operational error failure, but also recover anybody that was missed during that window of time, which I don't think will be a terribly hard thing to do. It'll probably be checking and make sure that everybody prior to the time that they specified and preferred is kind of slurped up in the query that is actually sending out. So maybe if there was an operational error there, that the next hour when it comes out, that person who was missed in that previous marker would go out with the next hour. And it's not quite their hour, but they get a prompt rather than getting no prompt at all, which I think is preferable. So that's how I think we'll handle that. But it's not a today problem. It's just here's an interesting thing that happened to me over the course of the week thing that I wasn't anticipating. All right. Another thing that I think is worth calling out is, and I can't show you this either because the URL for the admin has got a unique identifier in it to make it harder to discover on the web. But we didn't have any kind of static files set up yet. So the admin interface that I was looking at was just a raw HTML page with a bunch of 404 errors for image files that weren't able to load. It was a barely workable experience to get things logged in, so we need to clean that up. So I think this actually might be the next thing I want to start with. So let me actually put a mark here so I can remember this in the future. New thing that I was configuring this past week. Oh, I don't have, that didn't work. Well, shoot. I think all of the things that I configured, if you were joining in on Saturday on my stream, most of them are not working, hilariously. The marker is not working, which means that the file didn't actually open. I put in a little commenter thing. I pressed that. That didn't work. I have no comments, like the connection to YouTube seems to be broken. All sorts of stuff. So technology fails in abundant ways. That's okay. We'll roll with it. So, all right, we're going to work on WhiteNoise here. And let's talk about WhiteNoise. I've configured it on a different app, so this will be something that we can pull pretty heavily from the Homeschool app. But WhiteNoise is a way to serve static files in a fairly efficient way that is part of the Python web application. And without getting into the details of how it works, we can just basically trust that that this will do what we needed to do. Yeah, John, that's the hilarious part. Everything was working on Saturday. I had this nice little counter. It was showing me how many people were there. I want to hit the little AMA button again. I made an Ask Me Anything button, which is that first comment that I led with. None of that's working. When I press the little marker button, I get a little hazard warning instead of a green check, which means that's not working. I don't know. I'm not sure why technology is fighting against me here, but that seems to be the case. So we're going to get WhiteNoise. We're going to add it and make sure that it works for us on deployment. The thing that we want to, how will we validate this? So we can probably do some kind of basic, I think we have a basic index page right now, and maybe we can make that render to a template and then show just some image of some kind that can perhaps map to something that comes from the admin. And the whole point is just to see something. because I want to be able to validate this in production. That's the big thing, because I can't jump over to the admin on stream. So we're going to configure that, and then I do remember that static file storages tends to fight with my testing setup. So we'll want to, when we're doing local development, not use WhiteNoise, and that's fine. So all of these pieces we'll configure. We'll watch out for any gotchas. So WhiteNoise, just the idea behind it, and the idea behind the name WhiteNoise is static, is another name for static. So it's all about serving your static files and giving the locations for where to serve them. I don't remember there being much here. Yeah, okay. Let's just do it. Let's get WhiteNoise going from PyPI and find the right version. WhiteNoise 6.6.0. Okie dokie. So we want to go to our requirements file, go to the bottom and say WhiteNoise, and this is 6.6.0. And then we're going to come over here and do our pip compile command to make sure that WhiteNoise gets installed. So now we have WhiteNoise as part of the requirements txt, and from that we can do, oh boogers, where's this? Is it C flags? Yeah. I've got some C dependencies, so I've got this crazy command to actually get my packages up. But if you look at it carefully, ignore all this garbage at the beginning, but really the core of it is a pip install of the requirements files at the end here. So John, the way, so that's a good question. The question, and because I've noticed the chat replays are not coming back. So the question is, am I hosting static files on Heroku or a cloud like Amazon S3 or something like that? And the answer is I'm hosting it on Heroku itself. So the idea behind static files, or sorry, WhiteNoise in particular, is that it will combine the static files and put them in the specified location, and that will all get then bundled together with the application as part of the deployment. Normally, I think what Django, normally, I know that's too strong a word. Django has some options for what it recommends for static file hosting. One of them is a file system version of that, where you might do a collect static management command, and it will dump the files out to a directory. Then you can have something sitting in front of Django like Nginx, which can then serve the static files. So that's one common way. Another way is used to like a recommendation that John's making here, or a method that John is mentioning here is taking those files and uploading them to S3. And then anytime you have a static files reference, you can actually point to an S3 bucket and host files there. But this way is putting the static files into the packaging, the bundle that gets uploaded to Heroku, and the static files are actually served as an endpoint by WhiteNoise. WhiteNoise will handle anything in the static path, and that's what's cool about it. It's not quite as optimal, well, probably not by a long shot, compared to something like Nginx, but that having an Nginx is actually a more complicated setup for Heroku, because Heroku has its own load balancer in front of things. So I don't know that we ever really talked much about load balancers, but yeah, so when you have, this diagram is only accurate to a degree, I mean many degrees, but this path right here, there's the internet to Heroku. This is pretty much, it's not a lie, but there's a lot more happening in this arrow that I'm letting on. So the internet will, the SendGrid request in this case will come into the internet to Heroku's IP addresses, and Heroku will actually know that, oh, this is for Journey Inbox. I need to have there's a routing layer that will actually route to my dyno, which is the name for the compute power that's powering the web app instance here. And so that routing is Heroku's load balancer that they set in front of things. If you're running your system on your own, you might have your own load balancer, and you could use something like Nginx instead as the entry point for all of your system, and you can have multiple things that you point to and that's another way to go about it. But Heroku would not like that setup to have a single dyno be running a process that you can't. If you could imagine, like right here where I have the cursor, if you had an Nginx proxy sitting here, it's not really that doable. I'm sure there's probably some way to do it if you get really clever with your Heroku configuration of having multiple pieces, like if you did some kind of Docker setup, but it's not how it's designed. So because it's pretty much a straight shot from the Heroku router to gUnicorn, WhiteNoise kind of sits inside of here, serving your static files as a subsystem, and it does it fairly efficiently by using some Linux system calls, but it still does have to go through some amount of Python processing in order to do that. So there's definitely a performance penalty there. Alexandru, yeah, of EPS. That is like the way of things if you're not going with a platform as a service solution. Which, you know, I've gone with who does droplets? I'm drawing a blank. DigitalOcean. I was drawing a blank on that earlier. I was doing a podcast recording, and I couldn't. I said droplet. I knew the term that they had for their individual machines, but I couldn't think of the company's name. But yeah, I've gone that route before, and it's cool. It's like you learn a ton if you do the VPS. And for those that don't know, I think that stands for virtual private servers, I believe. So it's like your own rented space, basically, but it means you have to manage your operating system. You have to manage deployment in your own ways, and Heroku takes care of a lot of that for you, which is why I tend to recommend it if you're trying to get super fast and I just want to get a service out. Okay, so let's get back to the WhiteNoise bit. Hopefully that's enough context for y'all. If you have any questions, let me know. And we'll look at the actual configuration we have to do here to make all of this work properly. And I don't remember... there's a couple things I don't remember here. So let's also cheat and bring up my homeschool app. And if you want to cheat and use my homeschool app, you can. I make that code available. That's on GitHub at GitHub MB Layman Homeschool. So you can draw from that. That's an application that's been live for a couple of years, and it has a lot of my personal opinions here that I share on the stream. But I borrow from that quite extensively because I put a fair amount of thought into it. So we're going to steal from it because if you have it, you should. Yeah, you're right, Alexander. Your comment is Heroku's not bad, and I agree. There are cheaper options, absolutely. The challenge for me is, or for a lot of people, is cost, especially, the unit economics from around the world. Like you might be in a place where the cost of $15 a month is a lot bigger deal than, and so 5 versus 15 might be a substantial material impact for somebody. And that's kind of the way of the world, sadly. But I'm thankfully in a place where I can say, you know what, I'm gonna shell out $15 a month rather than 5. But if that's the spot you're in, I wish you luck. All right, so we've got this configuration guide about Django here, and we've installed WhiteNoise, but I want to make sure that we look at what I did for homeschool. So I'm going to bring this up, and we're going to go, first thing place we're going to stop is our settings file. And I think we can use the same setup here. So this is what WhiteNoise recommends, and this is what we're going to use. So let's go over our settings file. And I don't remember if I configured that or not. Static might be commented out. Nope, that's already configured. That's nice. And what else is here? We've got the static URL. Ooh, there's a difference there. Did I mess that up? Missing a slash in my static. Is there supposed to be a leading slash? Let's go check the docs. I don't want to lead y'all astray. So let's look at static. The thing we're after is static URL. What should be the format of that? Should it include a leading slash or not? Static URL. Okay, so their example says static with no slash, which I think is what I did on Journey Inbox. So I don't know. I guess maybe it doesn't matter, but it surprised me. Must normalize that. I'm following their directions here. All right, the other thing that we want, or are going to want, is an actual, this line here, static files DIRs. So what static files DIRs does is when you run a, well, how do I describe this? There's an operation that is intended to happen that I think Heroku does automatically for us, which is why we're probably not going to find it in the homeschool app, I bet. Now we'll collect static. Okay. So when Heroku is doing its build process to actually build this, it will detect that it's a Django app, and because it's a Django app, and because it knows to gather static files, it will run this management command called collect static. And collect static will scan through every one of your Django apps. I mean, it doesn't have to. There's some configuration settings, but the default way is to scan through each Django app that you have and look for a directory named static. And if it has encounters a static directory, it's going to pull that together and pull it all into a single directory. So all of your static files, which is like your images, any JavaScript or CSS files you might want to include, any stuff like that, is intended to go in the static directory. And the static because it doesn't change. That's the idea behind it. And the reason for pulling them together into a single place is so that when those files are served at runtime to your users, that is the operation, the lookup is as fast as possible because it's like a single directory. It maps kind of cleanly to the web. So if you have a /static URL, then every part of that could be just, you could look into that particular directory and match the path and see if the file is there or not. And if the file is there, you serve it. If it's not there, you get them a 404. If you didn't have this mechanism of collecting files into a single place, then the process of looking for a file to serve as a static file means you have to look through each application, check out each static directory, and potentially even more. So this static files DIRs option here is a way to specify any extra directories that you want to add to that compilation step. Oh, thank you, Alexander. Appreciate that. You can give a thumbs up on the video too. That would be super helpful. So we've got multiple sources of static files here. And we want to enable the static files DIRs option because eventually we'll have some to display. I don't know that we have any yet, and I don't think it'll blow up on us if we leave that there. I think it'll be fine, but let's try it out. So we can run the management command and run collect static. Cool, thank you. And there's a way to like have it skip this warning. This is what we're gonna run up against. So and this is a good warning. I appreciate this. So we had this static file setting, but it's saying static doesn't exist. So it's trying to save us, which is probably why I had it commented out. Like I have some checks that will not let things deploy or pass until static files are there. So maybe we're still not ready for it because there's no content that I want to put in there today. All right, let's keep it off. We don't strictly need it for WhiteNoise, but I'm going to put like a to-do in here. Well, that's a terrible place to put that. Let's just make sure there's an issue. Yeah, I don't see an issue. So we'll create a quick little one here. So enable static files DIRs, or else you're gonna have a bad time later. All right. So we'll leave that off. We won't put a comment in here because I'm not going to notice any comment. So we should still have WhiteNoise. We'll cancel this. And now by running manage collect static, we shouldn't get that warning anymore. We'll still get the prompt of do you want to replace these files? And you can see So it dumped these out to the static files directory. And that's the directory that Heroku is going to look for, or default to build to. And we've got this specified as static root. So we've got the site configured to read from that directory. If we do like a tree on static files, we'll see everything that got pulled in. So there's some stuff from Django extensions. There's some stuff from the admin site. This is all the stuff that I'm not currently getting on my site because we weren't running with WhiteNoise and there was no actual serving of those files. So in the absence of WhiteNoise, there are ways to serve a static entry point, but we didn't have that configured in our URL. So it's going to be, we look here, we had this static path, but this thing only works for a debug mode. If you have it, if you aren't doing debug, I think this thing doesn't work at all because, well, evidenced by the fact that I didn't see anything when I was checking out my admin page. Okay, so there are probably a couple things we want to fix. This is actually one of them because I know that we don't want to enable that. We want WhiteNoise to be the thing that's serving static files. We got to pay attention to that too. The Counselor 7, thanks for joining in. Wow, 3:38 a.m. That's dedication. Appreciate you being here, and thank you for the comment. So we've got. Let's go to the guide that we have for WhiteNoise. We now have static files configured. That was already configured. That's nice. And we'll get to this in a minute. So we'll have a template here that we can use as the basis of testing this out, but we're not ready for that yet. Let's do the middleware. And now they have a note here that says it should be placed directly after the security middleware. All right, let's chat about why. Remember earlier I said that the downside of serving static files with WhiteNoise is that you have to go through some Python code. And the reason that they recommend putting this here is you want to go through as little Python code as possible for a static file. Because remember, it's static. So presumably, if it's just a static file that's trying to be serving out some image content or whatever, then there's nothing to really, there's not a lot of reason to run any extra Python code. That's mostly like wasted effort because it's not going to be in the response going back. So you do want to have the security middleware in front to make sure that you have a safeguard. So like if you're getting, there's some controls in here. So if you're getting HTTP requests, you actually want to do the redirects to HTTPS. That can be done by the security middleware. But immediately following that, you want to have that static check so that as soon as it can detect that it's a static file path, it can abort all the rest of the process and give you the file directly. So that's why they want it as high in that middleware stack as possible. Because if you're not familiar with the middleware, it's kind of like an onion layer. So a request comes in and eventually gets the view is in the center. So it's going through all these middlewares and then it will eventually go out all the same set of middlewares at the bottom. So you can view this as the order in which these things execute as well. And then you can have the in like the view code would be here in that terms of layering. Okay, so let's put WhiteNoise up there, and we want to have we need to specify the storage. Oh! I think I also installed the wrong thing because yeah, I'm pretty positive I did. Let's go to the requirements file. Yep. Okay, let's fix what we installed. Sorry, y'all. Didn't think about this until it was too late. Oh, one step forward, two steps back. My bad. So not only does static file WhiteNoise serve our static files, it has the ability to do. We want to do that efficiently. Like we don't want to serve. If you have a big JavaScript file, text is a very good thing to compress. It will compress extremely well using gzip, and that's the default. But there are better compression schemes available on the web, and one of them is called Brotli. That gives you probably, I don't remember if it's something like 10 to 20% performance boost in terms of serving those static files. So, but that's not installed by default with WhiteNoise. So by adding this additional bracket syntax here and saying broadly, it's this thing, drawing a blank on what these things are called in the Python packaging land, but there's a way of specifying additional packages that you want to add in, and this is the way to do this for broadly. So let's go back to our requirements, our pip compile thing, and run it again, and it's probably going to install 2 packages this time. Yeah, now we've got not only WhiteNoise, but also broadly, so that when the compile static command runs, it's going to create gzip files, because not everything on the web can serve broadly. So when it's going to request content, it's going to say like, here's the compression scheme that I can support, or compression and decompression. Because if it doesn't know how to serve broadly and is given a broadly file, it can't decompress it and can't show the content. So it'll have gzip as a fallback, because virtually everything on the internet works with gzip. And then broadly will be there optionally for the browsers that support it, which is Chrome and Firefox, and I'm sure others, but at least the big couple ones out there that are still in their own engine, both support broadly. Okay, so now we need to reinstall our packages. That's the C flags thing. This should get broadly installed, and now we're back in business. All right. So the other bit that it says we need, right, is the static, what was it? Static files storages. Static files storage, excuse me. This thing. This is a Django setting, so Django is configurable in many different places, and the storage system is one of them. And this tells us to use that. And here's us using it in the homeschool app. So we're going to do the same thing down here. We'll use compress manifest static file storage. Now, one of the differences, though, in homeschool is that I have this in 2 places. When I'm running tests, now I don't know if we actually need to do this. I might leave it out because we're not using TZ detect right now. Let's just take it for now. I think we're going to need it later, and I'd rather have my tests use basic storage and not be running WhiteNoise. So in our test settings, we're going to go in here and include, we're essentially overwriting it. When you say older systems, are you talking about broadly there, John? So when we run tests, it's going to use the default static file storage. Bello, welcome. Good to see you again. Glad you're able to join in. We're working on integrating WhiteNoise for hosting static files this evening. So I think we have enough configuration at this point to actually make sure the tests run. Make sure that we didn't do anything wacky. Whoops. Static file storage setting is deprecated. Well. Oh yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not paying attention. My bad. Am I using that other? Okay. I guess I'm gonna have to correct homeschool when I go back and upgrade it. I thought. Do I have this twice? Storages? No. Okay. I just flat out am not up to date on this. Storages? Wow. Fun. New thing. Just a different way to specify the same things. I guess it gives optionality when it comes to more configuration. And this is, you can see it right here with the databases, and we have the same kind of thing with templates and stuff. They use a dictionary, so it's probably trying to correct something that was not adhering to the standard patterns. So here we've got essentially saying the same thing, I think. And I don't know what other settings we would need for now. I think that's it. But I do want to take this and put this, I'm going to correct all this garbage that I just created for myself. Okay. All right. So now we have the basic static file storage for our test setup and the compressed manifest file storage from WhiteNoise for our actual running. And when we test locally, we can actually, it will run with this setup, so this should be okay. And we can validate all of this before we deploy too, so that should work. All right, let's try again. Okay, seemed to run fine. Yep. We've got that going. And here's the comment on Brotli. So there's the note to install that way. We're not using a content delivery network, so I'm not worried about this section. And all right, let's read this. Actually, this one, I don't know that I've read these docs recently, so let's take a moment to actually read this, make sure that we're doing this properly. This might be new, or it might be, well, it's new to me, or new to my memory anyway. In development, Django's run server automatically takes over static file handling. In most cases, this is fine. However, this means that some of the improvements that WhiteNoise makes to static file handling won't be available in development, and opens up the possibility for differences in behavior between development and production. For this reason, it's a good idea to use WhiteNoise in development as well. All right. You can disable Django's static file handling and allow WhiteNoise to take. Oh, well, I'm not using run servers, so maybe this doesn't matter. Like I actually use gunicorn to do this. So now that I'm saying that, I feel like there was some stuff about static file detection, or that was maybe that was a templates thing. Never mind. So I think it will work. I think this will work fine. So we have, so now we have our storage set up here. Well, actually, this is the homeschool app. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong place. We've got our storage set up. I don't think we need any of these WhiteNoise settings because this one is already taking from debug. So if it's going to auto refresh if debug is on, which it will be when we're testing locally. And again, this is one using debug, so it's using finders, which we're not going to talk too much about. Yeah, none of those look shocking. Okay. So to test it out in reality, we need to turn off debug. Okay, that was the other thing I wanted to check on. So I think we've got the configuration right in the settings, but we need to go look at the URLs and see what I'm doing differently. Here's the difference. Well, not what I expected to see. Or this is not necessary now that we have, maybe that's it. Maybe now that we have this going with WhiteNoise, we can actually kill off this. I think I might have just added this as a temporary stand-in fix because WhiteNoise was not available when we first started. So let's try and validate this by getting rid of that and getting rid of that. Might simplify configuration here. And we'll see if we still have a working local admin. Okay. What did I say the admin was when I am developing locally? What do we call that? Shoot. admin URL path token. Okay, I'm gonna just do. I'm gonna cat the env file and then grep for admin, so I don't get just token. Thank you both. All right, I think so. Let's go see if we can get our admin site locally. This is what port? 5000, right? Wow, why is it 5001? What? What happened? I have another process running? I'm pretty sure I have not tested any of this stuff on 5001. That's weird. That's super weird. What happened there? Okay. Because the problem is now I don't know if this is going to be viewed as a whole different site, not have a password. That's the root of that. And then token admin. Hey, okay. So there's still so much of debugging output. But I think the fact that this loaded at all, if we bring up the network tab here and refresh, or you know what, we need to turn off caching. Let's disable the cache. And then try again. What? Oh, disable the cache. Oh, it was already disabled. Sorry, y'all. I'm not on my game today, it seems. Okay, so we've got clear evidence that it's pulling this base CSS file, and look at this path. It's pulling from static admin CSS, and we didn't have anything to serve that. So previously, I know for a fact that that we used to have to depend on that plus static thing. So now we get that benefit from WhiteNoise. And what we can do, actually, here's something we could do. We can, let's remove the collect static directory. Sorry, the static files directory, which is the output directory of the collect static operation that WhiteNoise is dependent upon. And let's turn debug equal off, and then run our process again. So now on that 5001 port, if we reload things, well, still is there. What happened? Did not actually. This might be one of those weird things where it didn't actually turn debug off. All right, that's not what I anticipated, so I don't trust this yet. I want to get confidence. I'm going to switch to secrets because I think I got some secrets in the env file. I'm going to turn debug mode off. One moment. Debug is set to on. I'm changing the value to off, which should set it to false inside of Django. And I'll get out of there. Bring this back. Okay, now I should just be able to run make. So, all right, got a different angry message here. And this is probably, well, it's from Django core. So let's run this again. Ooh, good fun. It didn't even boot up because of that message, I guess. All right, well, maybe I'm not going to get quite the validation I was hoping for, but oh well. So back over here, turn debug back on. And there we go. So, although it still looks broken. That's because I didn't restart stuff. So we should be able, so the static files directory is still gone, but now that we have debug on, it's not going to complain about it. And we should be able to come back here and it's loading everything fine. All right, let's do a template and let's modify the template to load a single static file from the admin site, find a path that works, and make sure that that loads. Here's a little image, I think, right? You can inspect this thing. Oh, come on now. Inspect. Why is it not showing me anything? That is so weird. Inspect. What's going on, y'all? Firefox, you're failing. There we go. Inspect. Okay. Oh, this might not be an icon that was loaded. It's just like embedded. I was hoping this would be some image file that we could actually look at. Well, okay. Guess we could use a lot of things. I'm overthinking this. I apologize. So let's go to journal or templates. Yeah, the path is correct. I deleted them a moment ago. So what you're seeing up here is I deleted it in order to do a test. And then I turned debugging back on, and so it's fine now. It doesn't care about that. It's trying to serve them directly out of wherever it can find them. But if I was running with debug off, I'd have to run collect static to make sure it actually had them. So I think that's what's going on. What I want to do is we have our local content. So we have our core index file. It's empty right now. If we go to the views for the core, we're rendering this page. Actually, we can take out these headers now. We don't need that junk anymore. It's just junking up my logs, no doubt. So here's something we're gonna put in there, and we can say hello. It's probably gonna break a test. I bet there's some test that is depending on emptiness there, maybe. Yep. Oh. Okay, we gotta correct that. I do not want to have to require static files during testing. Bello, I don't know what hero mevd means. Oh, he removed them. I see. Yeah. Okay. My bad. I'm not reading it very well. Okay. I absolutely do not want tests to have to require static files. That's no good. Right? So I'm confused. Did I... One of the things that I suppose I could have done on the homeschool app was hold on. I'm trying to see, did I take out this eliminates the warning about a missing static files directory? Well, that sounds promising. That sounds like what we're dealing with, right? User warning. Okay. Thank you, past app and past self, not having to figure out these silly problems. Let's go to the testing settings and drop this here. Whoops. And see if that solved the problem. Okay, cool. I'm just going to trust my past self here. And I can see what's going on, but it's not worth explaining. So our tests don't care about the actual content of this file. That's good. I was a little afraid that it might be looking for an empty content, but it's not. So what we can do here is create a load static line. And then we want to actually we want to trigger a browser to actually load something. And what could we load? We could do, oh man, I didn't want to do all this junk, but let's do a quick HTML tag. And then we could do a head tag. Whoops. Head. My indent stuff is not auto-detecting yet, so it's trying to do way more indentation than necessary. Let's get rid of that. All right. So why is it doing that? That's a weird styling. That looks really strange. Okay, don't care. In the head, we want to have a, let's try and load a CSS file. So we've got a link. Let's try and get the base CSS, I guess. We want a link, rel equals style sheet. And then, is it source? I always forget. href. And then here's where we want to specify the static include. Static. Oh man, do they want quotes? It's been too long since I've messed with static stuff. At work, I don't do a lot of server rendered pages, so it's been actually quite a while since I've messed with templates because I've been doing this like project setup for so long and I haven't touched the homeschool app that my brain is a little rusty on static stuff. So let's do a quick search for static, and I'm sure we'll get a bunch of hits here. So we've got, okay, it is double quotes, or it's quotes around the actual thing that we want to import. And what I don't know is what's the path for the admin. If we can find that quickly, we probably can. Let's jump over to the Django site, the Django clone that I have, and do a rip grep for base.css. Okay, here it is. Admin. So we really just need this. Then close that, and we got our tag. So now, now value your comment on body. Is I missing a body? Is that what you're saying? Well, whatever. I think we're good here. So let's fire this up. Let's go back to our root page and bring up the toolbar, have the network open, and see if everything is hunky-dory. Nope. What'd I mess up? Could not parse the remainder CSS from, okay. I messed something up. Oh, I'm being dumb. There we go. Legitimately my fault. Okay. So we've got now this thing is loading the base.css page, which is good. I think this will help us to validate the deployment. So what I'm going to do, I think we're done with everything we need to do. We've tested, we've run the tests. Those are working. They're working in a non-static file setup. We've got the middleware included. We've followed the guide from WhiteNoise here. There's nothing else really left to do because we're going to serve the static files directly from our Heroku site. So all of that should be good. And there's a bunch of like little nitty-gritty things that I think we can ignore here. So let's take a quick gander at what we actually changed. We cleaned up that index thing. but otherwise didn't touch the view. We've added the middleware. We've added the storage section. We've touched the test file. Oh, we cleaned out that direct static view rendering, which was a nice little cleanup. And then we've got our additions of WhiteNoise and our little test index file. Okay. So let's commit that. Oh man, rough is so fast. I can't even see pre-commit anymore, or barely notice it. Thank you, John. And that's not the one we want to fix. We just did 47. Add WhiteNoise. Fixes number 47. So the interesting part about this was actually, so I was on, like I said, I was on a podcast earlier this week. It's a Django chat. It's going to come out in a couple of weeks. And we were talking about going through this kind of setup stuff. Like it's taking me, I'm walking you all through it, and it's kind of fun to do it, setting up these things to get some base understanding of setting up Django sites. But sort of the question was, do we need to do this every time? Like when does a template come into mind that is actually configured all of this? And I'm not in a consultancy, so I don't have something that I just reach for. But this is now probably the third time that I've kind of set up some of these things. So I think if I do a fourth app in the future, we're gonna have to go like hardcore mode, where we start by setting up a template and then have it like render into the thing that we actually want to produce. And that way, if I do a fifth project or a sixth project, I can just start from that, and it would have the benefit of giving some opinions out there, or baking in my opinions about the web or Django sites into something that people can reference. Yeah, Merry Christmas to you. Happy early Christmas to you as well, John. Or season's greetings to people that don't celebrate Christmas. To each their own. Okay, so we've got this. I think we're ready to deploy. See if it goes well. Make deploy. This will be nice. My prompt tomorrow will include the word ago, so I will have a more pleasant experience there. Then once we validate, then we can move on to another item here in the list. Yeah, Bella, last week I think it was last week, I switched to using Rough, and it got rid of a boatload of tools. It was really, I mean, didn't get rid of it. It got rid of, yeah, it got rid of the tools, but it kept the checks because Rough is pretty exhaustive in all the things that it does. So it was a pretty nice simplification, and it's faster. And I got to clean up like a bunch of configuration files. It was really cool. One thing I'll be able to highlight in here as this goes along somewhere, I think I think Heroku does list this at some point, is it will say running collect static, or at least it used to. Might be after the package installs. Yeah, here it is. So as part of detecting that this was a Django app, it knew to run the collect static command, and builds those 130 files to build the slug, which is the Heroku's weird term for a package. All right, we're deployed. Let's go check it out. I think it's time to get this up and go to just journeyinbox.com. Should load everything. Cool. So we've got actually, this is an interesting time to comment on this. In our local testing, we saw base.css, and that's because we were in debug mode. And one of the things that WhiteNoise does is it fingerprints all of the files. And this is so it can do long-term caching of those files. And because the server side is doing template rendering, when it does that call to base.css, there's a manifest that's generated. So how does this process roughly works like this? The CSS file of base.css has you can run it through a hash function like an MD5, and you'll get a value there, and that value can be embedded into a file name, and then from that point forward you can think of that file name as unique to the content of base.css with whatever bytes were in that file. So that idea is known as fingerprinting. Once you've fingerprinted a file, this has advantages for optimization. By fingerprinting the file, that can be the URL that you actually send out over on the internet, because the user's browser, if you don't ever change that base.css file, then every time the page loads, if the content is the same, the fingerprint will still be the same. So you can tell what WhiteNoise will do is we'll add, and you can probably see it here, there should be some cache headers on here that say, yeah, a max age of, this is a number of seconds. I believe it's for a year, basically. So that's essentially the longest caching that the browser will do. And it's a signaling to the browser of, you're never going to need to come back to get this thing again. You've already got it, just use it. Now, the fingerprint gives you that advantage of, okay, now I want to change, and I wanted to add one line to base CSS. It's a different set of bytes, and when you run it through a hash function, it's going to generate a different short identifier. So the name would be, instead of 6497 blah, 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 it should be some other identifier. And the browser will detect that it's changed, it's a different path, and we'll have to get that. So, and then we'll cache that thing. So you'll have like two versions. This is a way to optimize the heck out of this, and this is actually one of the most powerful techniques that you would want out of something like WhiteNoise, because if you didn't do this, then every time somebody's coming to your site, there's no caching on those files, and you're going to get a lot of static files requests. So if you didn't recognize what this little number stuff was for, the thing to file away in your brain is fingerprinting, and know that it is a performance optimization. I think the really cool thing here for us, though, is we have confirmation that we got the base CSS file. And then I'd show you the admin, but again, I can't really, because without giving away the path to the admin, I'd have to go correct that token, which would be annoying. But we're good to go there. Let's look at the next thing to do. All right. There are so many directions we could go now. And the question is, which one do we take first? We have, I don't, can I actually move these around? No, it's not going to let me. So, I'm wondering if we should think of this in terms of another milestone to achieve. Like the first pass of this was like launch, right? That was the get something working that I, as user number one, can validate that this thing will work. We have confirmation that it works. Now it's time to operationalize. So I kind of want to, I'm tempted to make a new milestone so that we stay focused. Because the thing that I've noticed about the homeschool app is after I got a base set of functionality in there, kind of meandered. Yeah, I see that Stripe integration, John. I'll get to that in a second. So I think with perhaps the next goal should be, and I think I agree with you, John, is like, let's make it possible for other users to get onto the site. I think that's, yeah, let's do that. So let's create a milestone and give it a name and think through this. And let's say, what's a fun name? Users++. Enable multiple users. That's our objective. What do we already have? We already have the ability to create accounts because we integrated with AllAuth a while ago. But I don't know that I created any like sign-up mechanism. So that's something that we're going to need. Actually, we can check this against our list, see if there's stuff that I can draw from. I think we want number 1 in there. That will be part of that template, or part of that milestone. And this includes login and email verification. Was there a sign up page with that? Because we have just stuff from accounts, which includes, I think it includes sign up. But I think we're gonna have to, I think that's something that, at least in these early stages, especially when I have limited numbers of emails that I can send on this free tier, and I'm not messing with that. I want to gate that so that I can allow people, like if you all were interested and wanted to sign up, we could get that going. So I'd probably control that for time periods where I'd work with people to get them access. So let me scan through the other existing 18 issues to see what else would go into this, and then we can, once we have the set of existing stuff, then we can also flesh it out and make sure that we're considering the whole picture. So the other one that John pointed out, which I agree with, is number 7 is going to be vital. So let's add that guy. And anything else on this page that we absolutely need early? Not SMS. So along the way, we might need to pull in, like, it needs to not look completely horrible. Maybe not, actually. If most of the UI is, actually, let me pull y'all. If the mechanism is email, do we need to focus on UI, or would we just want to make it work with actual users and customers? Do you have an opinion? An authenticated homepage, again, not strictly necessary. Time zone is not necessary. Well, okay. I think we will have to do, I'm going to need a, I'm going to need a basic UI. And in order to get a basic UI, like, I can't in good conscience just like do a straight up HTML, or I could, I just feel bad about it. So I think kind of in pairing with our change for static files, setting up CSS is probably one of the things that we want to add along the way as kind of a prerequisite step that will give us the toolbox to build. They don't have to be beautiful pages, they don't have to be final style, but it should at least look like the starting points of where I would, like, almost like what do they call, wireframes, where if I give you a wireframe UI where these things were like roughly positioned in the right spot and maybe had basic looking buttons, that could be tolerable. So let's commit to that. And I think that might have been it. Yeah. All right. So now that we've got those 3 items, let's see if there's anything else we need to put in there. So the auth setup stuff as login and a template for email verification. And I think the other one that is going to be relevant is a sign up page. So what's that going to need? We need a template. I need a feature flag to control that. So the feature flag thing is an indicator that we need feature flag system. So add waffle for feature flag support. I don't use a ton of feature flags in my apps, but it's still very useful to have. The ability to feature flag is vital. When I say feature flag, do folks know what I'm talking about? We don't have to get into it today, but I can give a 30-second overview if people are completely unfamiliar. Okay, we've got feature flags, CSS, sign up page, auth. Okay, the other bit, I'm trying to think. I'm like, we could use the beta. Did I create a beta option, beta category? I don't know that I did. I think I just said exempt active trial. I think it was excluding beta in this idea, but maybe that was a mistake. All right, we've got a few statuses of trialing, active, exempt. So I might, if I want to like open up this slowly and let a few people bang on it, might want to do a beta thing. And the beta would allow me to, the trialing aspect of this is something I want to make available. And the idea is like you get a trial window for, I don't know, 2 weeks. I don't know what a reasonable time frame is, probably 2 weeks. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, if you have not signed up into an active mode, your trial will expire and your account will go into a state where I'll let you take your data out, but I'm not going to let you add new entries and that kind of stuff. So the full account view, if we're thinking about the full account lifecycle here, we need ultimately the ability to do trial expiration. So let's see, add trial expiration job. That's something they can run daily and can be pretty low tech. You did the password admin, forgot password, which did I incorporate with the route? I guess I'm not quite tracking your question, John. I have the admin login, if that's what you're asking. That's certainly there. I think the standard user login page is going to have the default template. So if I went to, like right now, I'm not logged in over here, but if we went to accounts login, I think that should go somewhere. So it's the default template for sign in. Oh, user forgets password. Oh, I see. Yeah, sorry, I missed that. That was a keyword. The forgot password flow is here. This again comes from all auth. And then you enter your email address. So this is another one. Yeah, you're probably right. You probably need to reset password flow or style those things. So I'll capture that in just a second. So the life cycle, though, the added trial expiration job so that have the ability to transition from trialing to trial expired. That is a really, in order to make this model work and have people that will actually pay me in the long run, there has to be the threat of your trial going away, and that has to be a reality. And I'm going to be, to be really clear, I try to be as gracious with this stuff as possible. Like I think with, I think I advertised as like 14 days for the homeschool app, or some number, it might be even more. Might have gone longer, 3 or 4 weeks, because you really like need to get a whole school configured. But in this mode where I'm going to have some kind of clock that's ticking against the trial accounts, I'm going to have a huge buffer for like, I say 14 days, but it'll probably be like 16 days or something like that in reality, just to be really friendly to people. I don't want to be a jerk, and I don't want people to feel like pressured, and I want to give them the time to sign up properly. That's just being, I don't know. I think operating with kindness is a good way to instill goodwill towards potential customers. So we've got this trial expiration job, and I think I like that you're calling out these these different templates, John. So we need password reset templates populated. Those are going to be HTML templates, or no, HTML pages. We might want the templates too. Think about both HTML page and email templates. Got those as well. Got to watch out for both. I mean, we don't have to be fancy, but I don't want it to be so ugly looking if I can avoid it. Yes, Heroku didn't have backups for the lowest tiers, but I think they got rid of the lowest tier. When they got rid of the free tier, the tier like below, there used to be like a free database level. Is that right? Don't quote me on that. Like there was a level of database support where at the below whatever level I'm on, they wouldn't do automatic database backups, and you have to set that up yourself, which is crazy. But at the level that I'm at, they do take periodic snapshots of the database. So I don't feel like that's an activity that I have to do. Now maybe there's an argument that at some point in the future, if I don't trust Heroku, like a belt and suspenders approach here of making a different backup mechanism. I know there are Django tools out there to do database backups, and that might be worth having as a dump to S3 as like a periodic monthly thing or something. It's just a disaster recovery sort of plan. Speaking of the topic of disaster recovery, that's can be a very big thing. If you have like a site that needs to be up all the time, you have to start thinking about, well, my site is served in this particular region, Amazon region of like US East 1 is kind of the classic one. And I need to be able to also serve over in a different region in case the whole Amazon region goes down. Most teams don't do that, which is, and you know it, when US East 1 goes down, the internet knows it, because there's so many teams that don't have that kind of backup plan in place, and they just let their stuff be down. Do I make atomic transactions? I don't recall. So I know there's a setting. Let's go look. It might be even in here. Atomic. In the past, I've relied on the default. So atomic request, is this what you're talking about? Atomic request works on the view layer. And I guess I don't want to go too deep into database theory, but there's a principle of a transaction. And the transaction is a way that the database is saying, like, hey, I'm ready to accept some changes, and I'm going to take whatever you give me in this transaction, and whatever you put in there, after you end that transaction, I'm going to do it. And the default mode in Django is as a view is going along and executing, and the ORM performs some kind of persistence operation, like you do a save. The default behavior is right at that moment, it creates a little transaction, just as the save, and then ends. And like, so you get per operation kind of commits. The challenge is like, well, what happens if during the processing of a whole view that thing fails? In that case, you might have some intermediate state where some stuff got saved and other stuff didn't get saved because it failed. So there's this option that we were just looking at called atomic requests. And you can see what it says is it says to wrap the entire view in a transaction. So now, if the previous mode was every little operation gets its own transaction, this mode says, no, for the entire execution of the view, all of the steps are going to be, we're either going to do it in one chunk or we're not going to do it at all. So if you get some kind of failure, then you won't get the possibility of being in that intermediate state stuff. I don't know if so. The downside of the atomic requests is both. There's good and bad to it. The upside is that you avoid that intermediate state problem. The downside is that it comes at a performance cost because keeping a transaction open requires that you maintain some kind of locks on the database effectively during that period for any of the tables that it's interacting with. It's complicated. I'm being very hand wavy here, literally hand wavy, and the subject of transactions gets quite involved. I think for our use case, most of the site will be pretty read-only, so I don't know that I actually need to set this up at the view layer because I don't know that we'd have a lot of persistence there. And even in the cases where we do have persistence, it's going to be, if I think the case that I'm thinking of is like we might want to let somebody manually put an entry in on, or one of their journal entries in on the web. Like maybe they missed a date and they don't want to go respond through their email and they want to type out their actual entry there. That would be one insert. They do record lock. Yeah, record locks. Yeah. Thanks, John. You're right. So there is some performance hit. It's probably you're right. It's not the whole table. So it's not like if one person's trying to access the entry table that everything in the entry table is locked. That'd be pretty wild. But there is definitely a performance hit associated with this setting. I think it's not going to really affect us because of the amount of writing that we actually have to do on the actual pages. So I'll probably leave this to the false setting for now. But appreciate the nudge to consider it at least. Okay, so what have we got here? We've got our password templates. We've got a nice little set of issues here. And this will help us stay focused over the next, couple of weeks, months as we get all this going. And also get us a little bit more set up. So we'll be interleaving product functionality, which we want, along with the continued setup process. I'm going to reorder these things into what I think we'll need to do. So we're going to need, my logical thinking here is I want to style a login page. Or I guess before we even get to the login page, we need the sign up page. So and in order to style a sign up page, we need CSS. CSS is going to bring with it Node.js, but I'm not gonna get into that right now. We might get to that. Well, we might start on that this evening. So we'll style the sign up page, and then we will, in order to fully support the sign up page, because I don't want anybody and their grandmother being able to sign in automatically. Not that there will be a ton of traffic going to Journey Inbox. I want to have a feature flag support so we can toggle this off. Basically say like, sorry, we're not ready yet. So that kind of control needs to be in there. So having these two things as the preconditions will enable us to get this sign up page. Then I think we're ready to continue on with the setup page. I think we can actually, I think we can punt on the Stripe integration a little later, because what I'm going to do is I want sign up to be as friction free as possible. That it does mean more tire kickers. Tire kickers, that concept is someone who signs up for a service with little to no intent of actually using it. They just want to see what it looks like. I get this on my homeschool site of just random users who very clearly through their usage behavior do like zilch on the site, and they just want to sign up. And so one mode that some businesses choose is to add friction to the sign up process, to say like, no, you're going to give me your credit card like right now. And that is a very strong filter for folks that don't want to do that. But that's not the setup I want to be in. I want to have people be able to enjoy this experience of using the journaling service for a couple weeks, find out if it's actually right for them, and then if it is, they sign up. If it's not, no big deal. So I think I'm listing that because I think that allows us to delay the Stripe integration until after we have the setup. So we can go through this, we can set this up, and we can actually even get some beta users, let people be trying it out, a limited number, because I have a limited number of emails that are allowed per day with the SendGrid account. Although it's pretty generous, but it would probably support, I don't know, maybe 20 to 30 users, and that'd be surprising if we got that far. And then once that's in place and people have a chance to do some feedback, then we could add the trial expiration stuff and the Stripe integration. And then finally, after that whole life cycle has been complete, then I think the password reset templates come into play. We could have people using the really stock reset templates if they're really having a problem. The flow will be there, and this will also trigger emails. So I don't know, it's fine. So this is the kind of the sequence of these things. That by the time this is done, we'll have a pretty ugly site, but it'll have users, and it'll actually even be connected to the Stripe account. So somebody could, in theory, go all the way from sign up to paying for this. Although I say that, we didn't actually model this. This is very vague right now. What does integration mean? It could mean as little as we have the ability to talk to Stripe, but it could also mean pricing pages and account management pages that we link to in Stripe. There's some work there to make that happen. We're not going to get to that tonight. All right, let's bite into this one. Let's talk about Tailwind. So we now have the ability to do static files, and I want to use Tailwind CSS because it's awesome. So I'm not going into why Tailwind is so awesome. I think it's just a really powerful, flexible tool that lets me work in HTML. That's a short version. Just trust me that it's pretty great. John, your comment on versioning and the package in PyProject TOML, I'm not really sure. I'm not doing any version. So Heroku itself does versioning of our deployments. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but I don't think I have to do any specific versioning of the app. Maybe you're thinking of something else. So we need to get Tailwind integrated and usable, and it's going to require some changes to the way that we run the site locally, and also, well, it's going to require some changes. So here's our getting started thing, and we can do this pretty basic setup with Tailwind here. And I think this will also get to the static directory that we didn't have, static dirs, that we left commented out because of the warning. So here's how I want this to flow. When we want to serve, so we saw our base CSS example from the admin site earlier, right? And the way that worked was the admin site had its own static directory, and then the collect static would put that static file into the final output directory. Similarly, we're going to have our CSS file for the site. I'll probably even call it base. It'll just be at a different path. And the base CSS for the whole Journey Inbox site needs to live somewhere. So we will put that base CSS file into, well, how did I do this? I think because there's a staging here where the base CSS is going to be generated by a Tailwind build process here. And then that's going to go into static files and then be collected. Yeah, I think that was the pattern. I need to refer back to homeschool. This will probably be clearer if I just look over there. So I think what I did, I think I called this front end. Yeah. All right. And then I called it site CSS. There's probably a bunch of stuff that we can steal from this. We're going to need a couple of configuration files, and then we're going to need to install some actual tools. Let's go do those things. And then we need to also, sorry y'all, still got a tickle in my throat. I guess I'm not fully over my cold from last week. We're going to need to update the build process on Heroku. Heroku is optimized to work on one language at a time. And it does that with these notions of a build pack. And the build pack is optimized for a particular programming language. We can go to this deploy job and we can see that it's running on this stack. And then here we go. It says using Heroku, the Heroku Python build pack. And that's because I told it to use the build pack. Or it might have been detected the first time it ran because it detected a requirements file. Tailwind is not a Python project. It is a Node.js project here. So we will need to be able to install Tailwind and then also have a build pack for Node.js. So if you think about the flow of how the build is going to go, I think I just mentioned a minute ago that we need to build the CSS file first. And then once the CSS file is placed in a place where Django can have it in the collect static directory, it'll just get slurped up in that process. So it's like build the JavaScript, the CSS, then do the Python stuff to actually collect it. So that's going to be the sequence of our build packs in the actual build job. And I think in order to make this work, we need a couple of things. Yeah. So here's where one of the aspects of Heroku that I'm not wild about is that these multi-language things end up like they all expect files in certain places, and you can have the Python one in here by having requirements txt at the top. But if you want to have a JavaScript version, you need to have the package JSON at the top. So we can't hide the package JSON into a subdirectory. It needs to be at the top in order for the detection stuff to work. That's kind of annoying, but that's the nature of it. So here is this version of it. And we'll probably take some updates, and we need to scan through the dependencies that we actually require. I don't know that how many of these are still needed or even recommended by Tailwind. So, and then we also have to, oh geez, do I even have npm installed? I might not have it on this machine. I do, okay. 9.5, that sounds old. Node. What is the npm, current npm? Or maybe I'm thinking of the Node.js version. Okay, never mind. That's a reasonable number. So the JavaScript ecosystem is wild, y'all. Node numbers are much higher than npm numbers, and I can never keep track of which is which. So first step here is to actually install Tailwind CSS, just like it says. And the -d means it's going to be a developer dependency, which is kind of indicating that if you're actually doing a JavaScript project that you wanted a separate executable or a separate set of, it's not executable is not the right term because it doesn't get bundled that way. Then you have a regular dependency section and a developer dependency section. And the developer dependencies don't get included with in a lot of the other bundling stuff. Are you running 10.2.4 npm? Oh, okay. All right, so let's get started. We're at this. We're gonna say install, And what this should do is, because there's no package JSON file that existed, that should be got created for us along with a package lock file and a node modules directory. Node modules is a bunch of stuff you don't want to include. This particular git ignore that I have is optimized for Python, so it doesn't know about node modules. So we want to go into our git ignore and jump to the bottom and say JavaScript and say node modules. But this directory can get gigantic, so this is really important. Let's actually, even just installing that, I'm curious how much did that install. 16 megabytes of code just to install one developer tool. Pretty wild, and that's a light install. Okay, so now we've got our package JSON here, and it has one dev dependency in it, just Tailwind. I'm going to assume for now that that's all we really need. Maybe it's been a while since, and I haven't been paying a lot of attention to this. Those are the stuff about post CSS and auto prefixer. Maybe those aren't actually needed anymore. Don't know. We'll need to explore. Okay, the other thing that we've got here is this Tailwind CSS init command, and I think this is going to generate that first config for us. So let's do that. And I'm sure it put that in the root directory, but I'm not going to want that to live in the root directory. That's the thing. That's the thing I want to change probably. I don't like having a ton of top-level files, and if I can avoid it, and the JavaScript ecosystem is particularly egregious about this. They have I think the average one that I see has maybe, well, who am I kidding? I've got way more here than I would like to confess. These things just stack up on you. So let's look at that Tailwind config and see what's there before we move it. So it's saying it's a pretty stock configuration right now. The thing that we want to do, so it says this, configure your template paths, and they're saying, their example is they're looking for any HTML or JS files under a source directory. We can steal from the homeschool app, and that is the location that we want, is this. We've got our top level templates directory. Oh, boo. Get out of here. For some reason, iTerm doesn't like it when I copy paste sometimes. Or I think it fights with NeoVim. So let's do this and then paste that in here. So now we're saying that we will look for templates in this path. And this is important for Tailwind as an optimization. Tailwind works by adding a lot of CSS classes to your HTML tags. And for every tag that it finds, or for every CSS class that it finds, if that is a valid Tailwind class, it will keep that in the final output. But it will keep only that. And so if you can think of it as like Tailwind is attempting to make sure that there are as few CSS class definitions as possible because it has so many of them. There's a multiplicative effect for reasons we're not going to go into. So it's really important to be able to point to where are you actually using Tailwind so that Tailwind can optimize that stuff. So we've got that there. The reason that my Tailwind config over here is has so much colors and stuff in it is I opted to keep the color scheme from a previous version of Tailwind, and that's what this configuration was for. But since we're starting fresh here, I don't need to do that. We'll just use the default color scheme from the latest version of Tailwind, which will allow us to keep this configuration file nice and tight. Okay, but I ultimately don't want our Tailwind stuff and our CSS files to all live at the top level directory. I'm going to do the same thing I did with homeschool, and I'm going to make a directory that I call front end. And those are going to be the front end concerns of the application. And we'll move the Tailwind config into the front end directory. And this is also where we will put our CSS file that we want to use. So now we've got this front end directory and it's got that config that we just set up. Okay. Let's continue down here. So we need a starting file that they've called input CSS, and then they've got an output. They've got an output directory. So we can let's just copy this directly, and in our front end directory, I'll call it the same name, why not? Input CSS, and we'll paste in, these are Tailwind like import directives. We don't need to worry too much about them. They're just like necessary elements that are allowing Tailwind to pull in everything that it needs. Get rid of this. And let's bring up the package JSON again. And we're going to steal from the other package JSON down here. There's a couple of commands that I built in here. And you'll see them over here. So there's this npx tailwind command that's saying like, take this input file, make this output file, and start a watch process. Now we have two modes of this. We have one where we actually want to watch. That's going to be our development mode. And then we have one where we want to just build the output, which is why we have two targets here. So we're going to steal both of these things. And we need to put them, sorry, let's steal this whole scripts section. Whoops, come on. There we go. Okay. We've got a new scripts section. There's the dependencies. We will probably want to specify the node engine. We'll want to verify that. Like we're not running with node 18 here. We're going to be running with node 19. And I can't remember. I think either Heroku complained, something along the way said, you don't have your engine specified. And that's like their version. I don't understand. I don't understand all the way their reasons for things. But now we've got these two things that, although we've got, this is not site, this is input. That's going to be input. And then the output is to this static CSS directory. Did I have a, hold on. Yeah. All right. So it gets tricky thinking about what files are considered generated files versus not. And this output file that we're going to get from Tailwind, sorry, blanked, is going to be a generated file that we don't want to keep. So like I can actually illustrate this. Let's see. Will it show up at all? Yeah. So if we run npm run build. There we go. So our static directory suddenly appeared as like a directory that we want to keep. And the reason for that is the static file in here has got a site CSS in it. Let's actually take a look at what's in that content. So it's got some pre-work that's like essentially clearing all the styles that might be coming from the browser. So it has a base condition to start with, and it includes a bunch of this stuff. And we're in a development mode, so it's got all this white space. So it's very readable. It's got comments. The long-term output of this will be detected automatically by Heroku. Heroku populates a certain environment variable, and Tailwind will pay attention to that variable and will actually like generate a compressed version of the CSS file that has none of that white space. to make it as tight as possible, because it's very important that your CSS be small, that be quick to download and very quick to parse, because it has to be there super early on a web page. So we've got that. That'll be good. And I think the other way we could have run that command. Can we run npx build? Well, is that the same thing as? No. Okay, I don't know what I'm talking about. So I thought npx was a synonym for npm run, but I'm clearly wrong. So we have two modes here. There's the build and there's the watch. The build is just the generated version thing, but we want to be able to watch this, because when we are modifying our templates, we can tell, because the npm command is running and we've told the configuration to pay attention to certain directories, including the templates directory. Anytime we modify the template and we save it, that a little watcher will be looking and saying, did you add a CSS attribute? Is there anything that we can track, that we can add, that we need to add to this build, to this generated CSS file, that when you reload the site, it's automatically there? That's what's going on with the watch process. So to take advantage of that, we need to change the way that we do procfile stuff. And on the homeschool app, I couldn't find a clean way to separate this. So we have a procfile for the actual deployed site. But what I ended up doing is a separate procfile for the local front end stuff. And we'll see how I modified the makefile to use the other one. So we want this line here of procfile run. We want to come over to our area, and then I want to create a a procfile .dev and paste that output. And I need the other two things from the dev. We'll put them right there. Okay. Now, in our makefile, we want to be able to specify which procfile that we're running. I'm kind of all over the place. I apologize if this is hard to follow. This will be all in one commit so that you can at least check it out later. We want to use the procfile dev. Now we're now in a position to take advantage of all this stuff. So let's watch what happens when I run make at this point. There's actually two things that will start up. So we have the actual gunicorn process that's still running on port 5001. But we also have this other watch command, which then runs Tailwind CSS. It's going to be paying attention to our input file. But really what it's paying attention to is it's watching that templates directory. And it's going to use that configuration file, and it's going to generate this CSS file anytime there's a change. And it's pretty quick. I don't remember if they wrote this in Rust or what they did. This is very speedy. In fact, that that 103 milliseconds is probably the longest time we'll ever see. If we made any modification. In fact, let's try it out. Let's see if we can trigger it. Let's go to that index, and we'll say class BG blue. So background color of blue. I don't know that actually is valid, but it was enough to trigger this, and this is telling me that actually we got that configuration right, because here it's saying, oh, I found it. I found that you did something, and I'm going to rebuild, and it took me 12 milliseconds to do that. It's pretty speedy. So certainly faster than I can process any visual change. So it's a fast enough flow. And if I save it again, it actually doesn't care about the content. It's going to be looking for any bytes in there. So it's any save of the templates will trigger a rebuild, whether or not it's actually a meaningful change, which is fine. So now we've got that running. We've got the new procfile here. Let's check out what we've got here. What I've kept around. We do want to add that git ignore. Let's do that. So we'll come back down here and we'll say we want to ignore, it was static site.css is the place that we don't want to pay attention to. And okay, so if we do another look at that. It no longer looks for the static directory. Okay. I think we're close. I think something that we can change here. So instead of, sorry, we just want to reference our own base CSS. That's the admin one, but our base CSS is going to be at the very base of the whole site, and it's going to be there because we're dumping. Sorry, not base, site CSS. We're dumping that information to static, and static doesn't have any subdirectories underneath it, so it's just going to be mixed into the root of the static file's output location. And a way that we can see that is we can run, like we still don't have the static files directory anymore. So if we run manage collect static, and it's going to take a second. There's a lot more to process there now because of WhiteNoise. So that was a lot slower, you might have noticed. And if we look at static files directory, what are we going to see? We don't see what I was hoping to see yet. And the reason why is this guy, enable static files dir. I knew that was going to bite me. Here it is. It just bit us. It's a quick change, but now we should have a file there regularly, and we can actually, it's a generated file in the getignore, so we might want to add a little .keep file just to ensure that the static file directory is going to be there so we don't get any warnings in any particular place. So let's go to the settings file and static and uncomment this. And now I'm going to rerun the collect static command, and we should see a difference. The difference is, well, first it's going to prompt us to delete this stuff. And so it's going to delete the directory and then rerun the output. And then now if we do a listing on that static files, now we see what I was hoping to see. So we see the site CSS. Here's the original. That gets dumped here by the collect static command. And then I guess then what happens, this is interesting. I hadn't realized that it would generate this many files, but this is fascinating. So then what happens is it generates the Brotli version, so that's the .br, and the gzip version, that's the .gz. And then the fingerprinting process kicks in, and so then it creates this identifier, and since it's all the same number, it must not be on the compressed files, it must be on the actual original site CSS file. So it's created copies. So I would guess that if we did like a diff between this file and this file, they're going to be the same. And similarly with the gzip files and the just CSS files. So that's why we do that. So John, we didn't have to add site CSS to the static files directly because that just gets brought up in the collect static flow. That's the key thing that, and I thank you for bringing that up. That's the key takeaway of this configuration is like it's sort of subtle. I had to say that the way I wired this together is the package JSON, which I don't have in source control yet, so I can't find it quickly. This build command, it dumps its output to that static directory. So input starts with input.css. The output is static.site/site.css, and collect static uses that static directory as an input directory into the process, and it eventually dumps it into static files as the output directory. That's the chain there. It's pretty easy thing to miss about how this is actually all wired together in the end. Okay, so I think we finally have the full process here, and let's go ahead and add one more thing to make sure that we keep the static directory. I'm just going to create a little file called .keep. We can delete this once we have some other like logos and things like that. But since the site.css that's here is a generated file, we don't actually want to save that, but we do want to persist the directory, and Git doesn't like holding empty directories, so that's what it's doing there. Okay, so I think we're ready to stage all this stuff and check it out and make sure that we have the full configuration of everything that's needed here. And we've got the things that we want to ignore that are JavaScript related. We've updated our proc file to have a developer version that will run our watcher command. And so we've got that new proc file. We've got the base Tailwind thing that we can use, and we've got the Tailwind configuration that is just looking at the templates directory. So that's cool. We didn't add, so we've got the package lock, which is going to be this monster file, no doubt. Gosh, it's going to go on forever. How do we get to, okay, I think we can get past this. Package JSON. All right. I'm sure that package lock file is just 99% of the content of this diff. So we've got our scripts commands there that are there. The scripts with is something that the npm world will run if you do npm run. It will look for whatever targets you define here. So npm run build, npm run watch are the things that are part of that. I don't think that we're going to have to specify any build target. I think that's part of the standard Heroku JavaScript build pack, which we need to add. We added our static files directory so that it actually found our site CSS file, and then we changed from the base CSS that we were testing to the site CSS that's going to be the real CSS for the site. Okay, so a couple more changes, and then we'll wrap it up and deploy, and we'll find out if the engine is going to be required or not. We need to add a Heroku build pack, and I always forget how to do this because I do it basically never. So we're going to do Heroku, it's probably build pack or build packs.help. Yeah. But it's how do you set the inserting? Okay, we want to add a build pack, but we need the position to be in a certain order. So let's first do Heroku build packs and see if it lists out the one that we have. It should just say, yeah, Heroku Python. So we need to add, well, I don't actually know it. I assume it's Heroku Node.js or something, but Heroku Node.js build pack. There's got to be an official one. Officially supported. Yeah, here it is. Heroku Node.js. Can we do tell us how to add it quickly? Heroku build packs. Yeah. Come on. It might be Hi Factor, welcome. This might be where the engine stuff comes into play, where Heroku is going to make you specify an engine. But I want to set a build pack in a certain position. Let's just poke with it. Heroku build packs. Is it set? That is the one we want? So we've got the app. So I think it's going to be a one-based index. So I think to get this right in the order that we want, I think it's going to look like this. Heroku build packs. And then the app is Journey Inbox. That's the name. I was able to pre-select a name that was memorable because I created it through the dashboard, so I don't have to remember something wacky like I have to do with homeschool. And the index is going to be 1. And but we got to put the build pack here first. So this should be Heroku Node.js. Non-existent flag. What? Oh. Need to do set. Wrong command. Build pack set. So now if we run Heroku build packs, we should see both of them in the sequence that we want. No, boo. We just lost the Python build pack. That's stupid. All right, fine. Heroku build packs, add Heroku Python. I guess since we're putting add here, hopefully it'll come after. All right. It's not the not the journey that I wanted to do to get there, but it's looking like the right answer. Let's just do one more confirmation. All right, we've got the two in sequence. And I think we've got everything we need to get this party started. So let's do this. Let's so add Tailwind CSS. This fixes, not only does it fix the Tailwind one, but it fixes that other issue that fixes 52. That was like the placeholder. It fixes that, and it fixes 14. And I guess I should check if the tests are still running before I push this up. Yep, that seems to be happy still. How much you want to bet I broke CI somehow? Let's try and push it up. Let's watch CI, make sure CI is passing before we actually deploy. I don't think there's anything risky about the change, but it'll be a good thing to check. So this will refresh. It should kill off 52. Yeah, 52's gone. So is the 14. And we can go actions and let that run. I think while I'm here, I don't think I need discussions. Oh, okay. I guess I'd already turned discussions off. All right, never mind. Hoping that tab would go away, but it's probably saying like use discussions. Yeah, okay. Not now. Get out of here. Thank you. Go back to actions. All right. Seemed like it ran okay. Check the run. Nothing to see. I mean, I could expand stuff, but who cares? Thanks, Factor. Appreciate the subscription. All right, so time to do the deploy. Moment of truth. I predict this will fail. I think it's going to fail because of the engine stuff. Well, let's find out. And then we'll read the log. So we want to see, what are we after here? We want to see, hold on. Okay. Let's check this. So we've got, we've got the stack we want. We've got the two build packs. It says a Node.js app is detected. That's because we have that package JSON. If it didn't have that, it would have failed. Got a runtime environment. This is the important environment variable that Tailwind is going to pay attention to. So because this is set to production, it's going to cause the build tool to run in a different mode. Now, this is something that we should probably correct, where it says engine is unspecified. And maybe it's going to give us a warning somewhere. Maybe not. Maybe we're okay to live without it. And then just let it default to the latest. And I'd be happy with that, actually, because it would be one less thing to have to keep up with. So it installs dependencies. Whoops. I'll get out of here. It's already done. That's cool. There's very little Python stuff to do. So it installed the dependencies and gives you the guilt warning about you should be all funding these open source projects. With what money? And it ran the build and did this command. So because the command was build, that's the stable thing. That's the thing that we had to hook into. It doesn't know about the watch command, but it does expect that there's a build command, and it will do that if it's there. So it ran our build and generated that site CSS file in the right place. Okay, so then caches dependencies and does some stuff, and we get our build succeeded message. Then there's like a handoff. Now we're to the next build pack, and the build process has left the file system in its current state. So we now have a static directory with a site CSS file in it. It goes along here and says, hey, there are no changes to the actual Python dependencies, so there's nothing to do here. That's pretty quick. And then we get here, importantly. Now, pay attention to the number. Last couple times we've been running this, it was 130, if you recall. So 131 tells us that we pulled in that extra site CSS file. Does the final release stuff and is all out there. All right, cool. I think what this will let us do now is go back to Journey Inbox, bring up this again, and we should be able to say Journey Inbox. And we still don't have a favicon, that's fine. But here we are. We've got our site CSS file. It's fingerprinted, which is what we want. And let's check it out. Let's see what we can see. This is the test I want to do to make sure that the node environment thing was respected. I don't have any reason to believe it won't be. But if we look at the response, oh, bummer. This is not what I was hoping to see. I was hoping all this stuff would be gone. So, what's the deal, yo? All right, something to correct because that should not have been there. So there's an optimization step that we need that was seemingly ignored, and I don't know why. Let's go explore that from the documentation, and I think that'll be a good place to wrap it up this evening. We've done quite a bit, but it'd be good to see that. Optimizing for production. Hell, it's almost like they read our minds of what we need. Let's keep going though. Let's click through a bunch of there's probably a reason why it has this order. So let's do that. We've got our style sheet output thing, so we know that it works, and I don't need to read about the actual usage of this. I'm more interested in this getting started guide. I'm not going to do editor setup. That's NeoVim stuff for me. I'm sure there's some plugin that we could install, but I think we're okay. Preprocessors. Okay. I always get confused about whether or not this applies because something about this I just find puzzling. A guide to using Tailwind with common CSS preprocessors like SaaS, and Stylus. Since Tailwind is a post CSS plugin, there's nothing stopping you from using it with SaaS, or Stylus. It is important to note that you don't need to use a preprocessor with Tailwind. Typically write very little CSS. All right. This is maybe the signal that I think I got rid of this stuff a while ago. Like I used to have a post CSS file, configuration file, and had to deal with this, and I imported it. And this is why you see some of the stuff that's in here, but I don't think we need it. In fact, I'm going to assume we don't. So they've got information using that with post CSS, with SaaS, and less. In the days of yore, those were tools that you needed to reach for more often. CSS has gotten a lot more powerful in the interim. Okay. Okay. Tailwind CSS is incredibly performance focused and aims to produce the smallest CSS file possible by only generating the CSS you're actually using in your project. Combined with minification, that's I think the step we need. Network compression, that's the Brotli gzip stuff that we get from WhiteNoise. This usually leads to CSS files that are less than 10 kilobytes. Like, let's look at ours. It's still small. We've already got it down to, this is only it's only 10 kilobytes in size. But if we can get rid of these comments along here, I mean, this thing would be 1 kilobyte right now. Like it literally has no rules that we care about. It's just resetting everything. So it should be as small as, like, we're talking about the baseline condition for Tailwind, and it's not there yet. So let's continue on. All right, so with CSS, files is small. You don't have to worry about complex situation, blah, blah, blah. For the smallest possible production build, we recommend minifying your CSS with a tool like CSS Nano and compressing it with Brotli. Okay. If you're using Tailwind CLI, which I am, you can minify your CSS using the minify flag. Okay, does that use CSS Nano by default? If you installed Tailwind as a post CSS plugin, which I have not. Okay, so maybe we're just missing the minify flag, which we can get with our build. Like most of the time, we're going to have watch, which is not going to minify. That's what we want. But the package JSON, let's come in here and add minify to this. And just to verify, let's confirm the static. This should look like with all the comments and stuff. And now if we run npm run build, we specified with minify, and if we look at the less output, much tighter. Much tighter. DUSH on that file is like, it's so small it's showing up as 4 kilobytes, which is like, think about as small as Mac usually likes to specify as its like minimum file size, basically. So I think that was the change we needed. So let's do this. Make sure CSS is minified. And let's push that up, but also let's start a deploy process here. Now, this time through, we have an npm cache. We didn't change anything. Well, we changed something about package JSON, so it might try and reinstall anyway. So it's not a good... Oh, it restored. All right, cool. Wow, that's so fast. Nice, I like it. It's already done with the node side of this. And so this is actually gonna be a good illustration too of fingerprinting. So we are talking now about a situation where the fingerprint's gonna be different. So we have 900F, but because there are fewer bytes because of the minified file, it's going to have a different fingerprint for what it produces. So when we refresh the page after this is deployed, we're going to see likely a different site CSS there, and we can check out the response, and we should see it a lot smaller. So pay attention to these numbers. Although I'm not going to I'm not going to clear the content, so we should also have the old numbers with us too. So that's useful. Let's try a refresh. And here we go. Oh yeah, look at that. So that is tight. Site CSS is, I mean, compression's amazing. Check this out. This is fascinating to me. Is that yes, we minified, but because of the compression, we actually didn't gain as much as we might have. Like, look at the uncompressed. The uncompressed went from 10.2 down to 3.5 kilobytes. That's great. That's a reduction in what, 7 kilobytes basically. But because compression is so magical, the difference between what was actually transferred over the wire is not as significant as that 7 kilobytes. It was only what is that, like 1.4 kilobytes of difference? Now both are, that's crazy fast in terms, or crazy small in terms of size, and it's going to give you about the optimal experience. But we can click this one now, and now we can see that the response, we lost all those comments, all that white space. And this has that advantage that now when the browser engine loads up this file, there are, I mean, I'm sure it can chew through white space and those things quickly, but every little bit helps. And this leads to things like time to paint, which is a concept of how quickly can we know what your styles are supposed to be, And then once we parsed your HTML, we're applying all the styles, and how quickly do you see a response? So having a minimal CSS file is pretty important. So I think that leads us to kind of the end of where we need to be for this evening, for this particular stream. Let's check out where we are and what's going to be coming up next. We've got, so now we have CSS available to us. We did all of the cleanup from the previous week of operation. So I'll keep reporting back on how things are going periodically as a user. Hopefully it's just quiet. Like there's the interface to this app. Once you get it going, like the other service that I use, I basically never log into it. I never have really much reason to. It's because the email is the primary interface, and I'm happy with that. So this is all kind of gravy now to get people on board. But anyway, we have our CSS flow. I'm going to want to add in the ability to do feature flags, and we will add in Waffle to do that. I'm going to go simpler this time. There's an ability with Waffle to, like with the user model, you can do a custom user model, and they have the same ability with Waffle to do a custom flag model. And if you don't know what feature flags are, don't worry too much about this today. I'll explain more in detail next time. And I don't want to do the custom flag route this time. I think I did it for homeschool. It ended up just being like, I never use this. What's the big deal? Let's just have flags for what they are. And that should save us a little bit of time with actually setting it up so that we can focus on styling the sign up page and getting kind of a base set up and begin thinking about themes. Like I don't know how I want to pursue the design of this theme. The vision I have in my head, so we've called the service Journey Inbox. And what I have in mind is something kind of like somewhat rustic feeling. I'm thinking of like deep forests and like rich greens and maybe like forested mountains and something of that vibe to it, to kind of indicate that life is like a journey, and I want to hint at that. I don't know if I want to be cheesy and try and fold in like a literal mail inbox. I think that gets too on the nose. So if I can have a theme around forest and trees and mountains and just have like an icon that, I mean, I can almost, I can't picture anything because I have aphantasia, but conceptually, I can imagine that we would have points and an angular kind of logo and something like that. That can be fun. So that'll give us some playground that we can do for templates. We don't have to get super fancy yet, but just roughing in some maybe color palette that we might want to use. That's something fun to think through as we get deeper in here. So we'll do feature flags. We'll work on a template for the sign up page. We will make sure that template is guarded by a feature flag, so it can only be activated when I'm ready to, which ensures that people just can't sign up willy-nilly for the site. And then we'll be able to advance to the other templates that we have to focus on, and then finally get down to the Stripe integration. I won't be around for next week because I'm running the Python Frederick meetup. I'm actually giving a presentation next week, so I'll have a recording. It'll be a recording from me, but just on a different topic. It's a topic called temporal. It's about workflow tools. So I will put that on the channel as well if you want to check that out later. If you're here live, and if you don't mind doing me a favor, give me a thumbs up and or leave some comments, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you want to support me, there's a bunch of ways you can do that. Eventually, you'll be able to pay for Journey Inbox, not yet, and that way get something back very directly. But I have a book that's live, Understand Django. You can find that on my website, although I don't know that I have a link to the actual place to buy it. So you can go to Amazon.com, search for Understand Django. You can find it there. You can also support me on Patreon as MB Layman if you are feeling so inclined, and I'll be doing that. So I'll be using some of that money to further invest in the stream. Yeah, there's still lots of stuff I can do. I gotta fix all the stuff that I broke from Saturday. I don't know, but I try and take the money that I receive from that and pour it back into this because that I think it just improves the experience overall. I do have a bunch of patrons, so I want to say thanks to Rupert, Andrew, Dragos, Ryan, Patrick, Fred, Aaron, Philip, Shivan, Miguel, and Monty. Thank you all for contributing in some small way regularly. I'm really grateful. And for everybody else that was able to join in the chat, really enjoyed chatting with you. And I will see you all in a couple of weeks. Take care.